We'll be efficient in our action this evening. Thank you, everybody. It's the Thursday, June 3rd, regular meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Planning Commission. I will call the meeting to order. Can we have our roll call, please?
Burgess.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Harrison.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Milliken.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Patelko. Pitts. Swan.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Phelps.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Bias.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Great, thank you. We have quorum. We received an agenda in our packets today. Are there, or not today, but in our packets earlier prior to the meeting. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I will move that we approve the agenda of our April 21st meeting.
Motion by Burgess. Is there a second?
I second.
We'll give that one to Ms. Swan. All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. Okay, thank you. Motion is approved. All right, we also received minutes from our April 21st, 2021 regular meeting. Are there any comments, questions, changes, edits to those minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from April 21?
So moved, Phelps.
And second?
Second by Harrison.
Motion by Phelps, second by Harrison. All in favor, say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed, say no. Great. Thank you very much. Minutes are approved. Are there any communications or announcements?
There are none this evening. I am going to, Commissioner Patelko missed our roll call, but I see that he's present, so I just want to make sure the minutes reflect that he has joined the meeting.
Great. Thank you for doing that. All right, then we'll move to our public hearings. As a reminder, in our virtual environment here, we will be taking public comments for our public hearings as well as later in our meeting. If you'd like to leave a comment, please call 269-226-6573. At the prompt, you'll be asked what item you'd like to leave a message about, and we will play those at the appropriate time during the meeting, depending on the hearing. Or if you'd like to leave a general message on a non-agenda item, we will also have an opportunity later in the meeting to hear those messages as well. So again, that number 269-226-6573. With that, the first public hearing, PC 2021.07, is the rezoning of 203, 207, and 211 Wall Street from commercial office CO to the Live Work 1 LW1 district. And before we kick it off, I will be abstaining from this. I am on the board of KNHS, who is the applicant of this. And I previously voted a couple of times at board meetings about this case. So as such, I feel there's a bias here. And so I will be abstaining, and I'll turn this over to Vice Chair Bias, let her run it from here, and I'll jump back into the meeting when this is all done. So take it away, Ms. Bias.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Greg. So for public hearing PC number 2021-07, can we have a staff presentation?
You sure can. I'm going to bring it up right now. And before I get going here, Amanda Cochran, were you sending the link to Sade, or was that somebody from IT? I just got another text from her that she's still waiting on a link to get into the meeting. So if you could check on that, I'd appreciate it. Okay. So without further ado, and can everybody see the screen? Yes. All right. So this is the rezoning of the newly created parcels 203, 207, and 211 Wall Street. So the corner of South Rose and Wall Street. This request has been brought forward by KNHS. And tonight we have Matt Milzarek from KNHS to speak on this project, this infill housing project, and the rezoning that needs to occur first. So, so here's the view of the corner showing the subject property. And as far as the, what's going on with this property, it was in a past time, it had two structures. One was demolished in 2012, and it just has the one remaining house that's in poor condition, which will be torn down as a result of this project. And wanted to flip to this to just to show how it's going to be broken out. The larger remainder parcel to the south is where the ROI office building is. And so it's just that northeast corner that's being broken off into three buildable parcels. And those will all be in this this new Live Work 1 zone if all gets approved. So looking across the street, we have a single dwelling set up over there. We also have a community garden right next to it to the east, which you can see the little makeshift greenhouse they've got, that temporary structure. Each one of the parcels that's being created on this property is between 45 and 48 feet wide and roughly 112 feet in depth. Looking to the west, it shows that there is what looks like mostly single family homes. Many of them are duplexes. There is one 4-unit exception, but everything else is 1 unit or 2 units going down the street over to South Park Street. And looking to the south, there's the ROI office building that I mentioned. And that's going to be the remainder parcel, or is the remainder parcel, as this land division has already been approved. And then looking at the zoning, just flipping to this real quick to kind of get a flavor for Wall Street there. You can see the north side is all RM36. The south side has been zoned commercial office all the way from Park Street to South Rose for a considerable time, yet the street, both north and south sides, maintain that residential character, which then falls in line with the future land use map, which shows both sides of the street in an R2 medium density residential district, which aligns well with this Live Work 1, which is the lower intensity of the two Live Work zone districts. KNHS has been working on this project to do infill housing since 2019. And they actually are partnering with the city, as part of the city's housing strategies program. And there's funding involved in this also for the Housing for All funding. But it is all, we look at KNHS as one of the city's project partners in creating and fulfilling our housing strategy. The planning division staff did initiate discussions in the past about this area of Wall Street and South Rose becoming Live Work 1 and other blocks in the Vine neighborhood pre-COVID, but then put a pause on that due to our difficulty with public outreach. The rezoning of this group of parcels created to Live Work 1 will allow for number one, the infill housing project that KNHS wants to do, where it is currently commercial office zone district, which doesn't allow residential units on the ground floor, but it will also allow for a mix of commercial, small scale commercial that would fit the neighborhood as well if it evolves to that in the future. Strategic vision alignment, master plan 2025 alignment, Vine neighborhood plan. This rezoning and the proposed project do touch on goals in all three of those plans. Creating infill housing, adding housing options in Kalamazoo, and assisting the city in implementing its housing strategy. As far as the community engagement, the city has done their normal 300-foot mailing radius of notices that went out on May 19th. No correspondences have been received for or against this request. KNHS, which Matt will expound upon, but has been actively engaged in public outreach for some time, as I mentioned, and they've met with folks in the neighborhood, the building blocks program, the Vine neighborhood program, Vine Neighborhood Association, and have worked through a lot of iterations, I guess, of how they would develop these sites when they get to that point. The staff rationale and our look at the review criteria that applies when a proposed rezoning is brought forth. Under the criteria where you're looking at what the extent to which the amendment is consistent with the master plan 2025 and the strategic vision. This rezoning request does align with those, as I mentioned in the past. The extent to which there are changed conditions that require amendment. As I mentioned, Wall Street has remained residential in character, and even the existing commercial zoning that applied to the entire south side did not alter the character of the south side of the street. It remained residential, and this rezoning to Live Work 1 will better align with the current land uses and the character of Wall Street, bringing it into that Live Work 1 zone district. And the extent to which the proposed amendment addresses a demonstrated community need, as mentioned before, there is a need for more housing, and this is a wonderful opportunity for some infill housing on this corner that really aligns with the character of the area. The extent to which the proposed amendment is compatible with the existing and proposed uses of the surrounding area. I did touch on the development pattern that exists, and that development pattern also extends to the east side of South Rose Street. It actually extends down the next block of Wall Street going towards South Burdick too. That's predominantly residential. And then lastly, on our criteria, we look at the proposed amendment and how it would result in a logical and orderly development pattern. And this Live Work 1 zone has form-based development standards that will guide how these sites are developed in character with the other structures in the area. So that is the conclusion of the staff report, and the recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning to the City Commission. I will now introduce Matt Milzarek from KNHS.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that rundown of everything here. Thank you everyone for your time tonight. Glad to be back here with another project before the commission. This project has really been the result of multiple years of work with the Incremental Development Alliance and the city's planning department. We've got 3 parcels here that we purchased from ROI with the intent of putting in infill housing. For this year, we're looking at a duplex on the corner with a garage with an accessory dwelling unit above. So 3 total new housing units right on the corner. And then the 2 lots that are off of the corner will likely be single family housing. When we originally got into this, we were considering a little higher density, probably multiple duplexes down the street. And we had a variety of feedback from residents and owners and stakeholders in the area that felt that was a little bit too high on the density. So we did scale back plans to keep just the density on the corner with drives coming off of Rose Street as well, and then going down to the single family on the street itself. For those who have never been on Wall Street, it is a very narrow street with quite a bit of existing density. So we felt that was a pretty good compromise. All the folks were happy with. There were also concerns over site planning and a very large bur oak tree on the site. We were able to work with the city's consultant and design folks to get that to move everything around where we were able to keep that historic tree. It's probably one of the oldest remaining in town. So we got that trimmed up this year before it was too late in the season, so that can remain as we continue to develop those lots. And that was, again, result of feedback from the residents and stakeholders in that area. So we're really excited to have this before you and keep on making some new infill in the neighborhood.
Thanks, Matt. Let me first ask, do planning commissioners have any questions of the staff? Questions, clarifications? Seeing none, does anybody have questions for the applicant? Okay, yes, Commissioner Burgess.
Sure. I'll go ahead and take a stab at a question. Since I'm new to this, Matt, could you tell me a little bit more about your organization? It might not be particularly relevant to this specific situation, but if you could tell me about other projects like this that you've done and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. KNHS, we're celebrating our 40th year this year. We've been a community development corporation over the years with a wide range of services. We have home ownership classes and counseling and financial coaching we do for folks all throughout the county, as well as foreclosure prevention counseling. Over in my department, it's all the nuts and bolts construction projects. So we've got homeowner rehab projects. We rehabilitate vacant foreclosed homes. We've got, over the last couple years, we've been in the new construction business. We had previously built many new infill homes back in the 2000s and 90s. Obviously that went away with the recession. But we are on year 3 of building infill housing in the neighborhoods, Northside, Eastside, Edison, and Vine. This particular site is pretty exciting because it's connected to a really about a 10-year, 11-year long target zone that we've been involved with. I actually started developing that target zone at my previous employer, the Vine Neighborhood Association, about 10 years ago. And a variety of nonprofits came together to really target this area. And a block away, we have, 3 existing new construction properties that just actually we closed on 2 of them to low-income buyers last week and the week before, and we have a third that's on the market. And 1, 2, 7, 8 vacant homes we rehabbed and got into the hands of homeowners, and an additional 2 structures on Bur Oak Street that are coming down this year and making way for some new infill single family, and probably 15 or so client rehabs we've done over the last decade in that little area there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, can we open the public hearing? Are there any comments that have been left for this agenda item?
Yes, we have one comment, and I will play that momentarily.
Thanks.
Yeah, good afternoon or good evening. My name is John Cruiser and my address is 817 Boswell Lane, Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm also the chairperson of Asylum Lake Preservation Association. I want to make sure that I voice our support of the phase 2 of the natural features protection. I think it's absolutely imperative that the city move forward with the suggestions that the community has put forth onto the mapping. The further that we get into the discussion in regards to the importance of green spaces, I think it's absolutely necessary that we factor in the importance of the green spaces. Certainly, sometimes they may not be the ideal green spaces that some people imagine, but for the people that are next to them, surrounded by them, it's a lot of times it's all that they have. It's their little slice of heaven. It's their little slice of paradise. It gives them the peace of mind. It helps them heal emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it's a positive thing. I think that there's so much development and there's so much disconnection with our technology that it's so important that we maintain a connection to what truly is real. And what's real is the natural spaces, the natural things, the trees, the air, the grass, the water, and what sometimes may seem insignificant to others in the big context of things is all that a lot of people have. And I think it's important for a community, it's important for our city, it's important for our world to create more green spaces and to factor them as just as important as everything else. Hope you take into consideration everything. I hope you support it. I'm sure you will. It's the right thing to do. Have a great evening.
Okay, so I think that was not for this particular agenda item, correct?
Yeah, it was left in the hearing one, so. But that was the only one that was left for him.
Okay. Okay, thanks. All right, well, since there are no other comments, we will close the public hearing. Are there any final clarifying questions from planning commissioners at this time? Okay, is there a motion?
Nobody has any discussion at this point. You want to go straight to motions?
We'll discuss after we make the motion.
Well,
let me rephrase. Can I have a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion that we recommend to the city commission that the zoning be changed on these parcels from CO to live work 1.
Motion by Commissioner Burgess. Is there a second?
I support.
Support by Commissioner Chambers. Commissioner Burgess, would you like to speak to your motion?
Briefly, I think it's fairly straightforward. I think that it's pretty clear that the parcels in question that's going to live work 1 is more consistent with the properties to the northwest and the east than that are the way they currently are than the commercial office. And also it's much more consistent with where we want to be in the future, according to the master plan and strategic vision. I think the staff did the 5 criteria and the staff findings support it very well. I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments, discussion?
All right, I'll talk about more if I may. Just the last thing that I think, whatever we can do to support infill housing, to do anything to help to improve the amount of low income or manageable cost housing in the city we can do is important also.
Anybody else?
I'll say one thing as well. I'll also say I'm glad that this has finally happened. I know we haven't voted yet, but I'm definitely in full support because this should have been changed even before now, but I'm glad that we're getting ready to change it because it's definitely going to make this neighborhood better. And then also the people that live there, for their properties to have better value, and then for us to bring in better, better housing for people and to build up this community. And I'm just glad that it's finally happening. I'm glad that we can help it move to the next phase.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, seeing no other comments, we will have a vote.
Burgess,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Milliken is abstaining, Phelps,
Yes.
Patelko,
Yes.
Pitts is not here, Swan,
Yes.
and Vias.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chair Vias, for leading us through that. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to PC 21.08, another rezoning request. We're just going to say it's a bunch of parcels, a bunch of zoning districts in the Northside neighborhood, and staff will provide greater illumination on that topic.
Thank you. Are the slides visible for everybody? Okay. And I'm going to apologize for my voice and the coughing if that indeed takes over. This is, again, thanks for reviewing this case tonight. My name is Christina Anderson. I'm the city planner. I have brought this before you to update you on multiple times over the last few months. This is work to rezone an area which is roughly south of Patterson, east of Edwards, north of North, and west of Walbridge and Verburg Park. And it's a little over, it's about 80 parcels, most of which are zoned manufacturing, a couple that are zoned residential mixed use with riverfront overlay and NFP. But the story for all the parcels is that they are all zoned something that doesn't really match with what exists on the ground and or with the vision of this area that was created by the neighborhood. And so that is why we're bringing this forward tonight. So to catch you up, and again, I've presented some of this before. We actually, I don't even have it on the slide, but we started this conversation pre-COVID. Again, that seems to be the running theme for us tonight. We had a meeting at Mount Zion back in January of 2020 to look at this area as well as a couple of other blocks. COVID hit and we paused the process with the limitations on being able to have conversations and do outreach. We restarted the process this past March. We had a more concentrated area, and we're able to do some targeted outreach to make sure that we are having the right conversations with the people who live, work, and own the properties in this area. So we started in March we hand delivered flyers to all the residences and then mailed flyers to all the other properties, and residents got it again. We've done several presentations and conversations about this work, including a recorded online presentation, presentations to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, which owns about 25% of the lots in this area. We also presented this work to the Northside Cultural Business District Authority back in April. Their boundary abuts this area, and the Northside Cultural Business District is already zoned the districts that we're proposing to add here tonight. So we wanted to make sure that they knew what was going on around them. And then we sent our notice letters early. We sent them about 3 weeks early so we could also notice a meeting that was held in person. It was very exciting at NAC, the Northside Association for Community Development, where we had some residents attend and we presented to the board what the project was and had a discussion both on the land use as well as the streets in the area. And while we're not going to talk a lot about the streets tonight, just so you know, the city is reviewing the streets, the sidewalks, the lights, the trees in this area, and is going to have some outreach meetings that will happen in early August in a couple locations on the north side to discuss not only this section of the Northside neighborhood, but the wider area to make sure that we are being responsive to the priorities for what needs to be updated and repaired infrastructure-wise in the Northside neighborhood, to make sure that our capital improvement plan, which again is that document that you guys review at the end of every year, to make sure that that is being responsive to what the priorities of the neighborhood are. So that was also part of our discussion, even though that's not up for review tonight. And so we've had quite a few discussions. We've had a lot of conversations over the phone with some of the residents in the area, and are here tonight to present it and request your recommendation to the City Commission. So here is a map of the area that we are talking about. You can see it's kind of divided into 2 blocks. So the vast majority of it running, from Patterson down to North Street, Wallbridge, and it just barely touches Edwards, is currently zoned manufacturing or M1. So M1, as you can imagine, focuses on manufacturing uses as well as some commercial uses, but it does not support residential. It says the existing residential can stay, but you can't do any new residential and you can't expand. And we heard from a couple residents that they had tried to add on to their homes in recent years and could not because of this zoning classification without having to go through approval processes with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So in addition to not, in addition to the challenge of not supporting one of the major uses in the area, M1 is typically occurs on larger lots, larger blocks, certainly larger streets than what exists within the neighborhood here. And, it opens the door to uses that don't necessarily align with what the community vision is for the area. And it's kind of the same story for the 2 parcels that are up in the East Corridor. Again, we have a zoning classification that doesn't match with the area or doesn't match with what the use is. The lots are used for manufacturing. They're part of the graphics package campus that exists to the north, but they're zoned residential mixed use, and they have the riverfront overlay placed on them. The riverfront overlay and RMU, this was done in, the first decade or so of the 2000s. I don't know if I'm referring to that correctly, but, and it really envisioned the area as changing and becoming residential and moving away from its manufacturing. And that has not been what has happened along Patterson. And so we're trying to, it certainly is, that's what's happened in the neighborhood, and we're asking for a zoning change to reflect that. And on Patterson, we're asking for the same thing, a zoning change that reflects the Patterson from here to the east as an intense, commercial and industrial street, and want the zoning to match. So these zoning changes are in alignment with the strategic vision, the master plan, and the neighborhood plan. This is actually the second phase of rezoning work we've done in the Northside neighborhood since the neighborhood plan was approved. The goals specifically that the neighborhood laid out for themselves include goals that relate to zoning or can't happen unless the zoning is right. So, a goal to increase the number of resident-owned businesses, especially those by African Americans and low-income residents, preserve existing housing and build new housing to accommodate all residents' needs. And there were discussions, that noted in our meetings the out-of-date commercial and manufacturing zoning that in some places in the north side was overlaid on top of active residential blocks like we find here. So what are we proposing? We are proposing in the kind of the core area, a mix of Live Work 1 and Live Work 2. Again, this matches the zoning that exists currently along Patterson to the west, along Edwards to the west, and along Frank and North Streets to the south. We have laid out Live Work 1 and Live Work 2 based on the where single family exists, because Live Work 1 supports single family. We want to make sure that, you know, at the core of this, that we're supporting the existing residential uses in the neighborhood and allowing those lots to be infilled to expand housing opportunities and to allow houses to be expanded based on resident needs. And the use of Live Work 2 in key places along Patterson and down along North and Frank Street, where there are some more larger lot developments with some commercial uses. You know, again, the goal of this was to recognize what exists there today, make sure that we are aligning it with the future vision for the area, and that kind of represents how we divided up Live Work 1 and Live Work 2. On the 2 east parcels, the staff is recommending that we remove residential mixed use, or RMU, for those 2 parcels, as well as the riverfront overlay, and leave the natural features protection in place and add manufacturing, or M1. So when we talk about the 5 criteria for why staff would support a rezoning effort, you know, the first criteria, as Pete also mentioned with the Wall Street case, is, you know, does this align with the master plan? And the answer is yes, this aligns with the strategic vision, complete neighborhoods, economic vitality goals. It aligns with the master plan, which said we needed to update the zoning code to reflect community vision. And it aligns with the Northside neighborhood plan, specifically the strategies I mentioned previously. You know, circumstances of this area have changed since the 2005 zoning code was placed in this area. To some extent, the zoning was meant to move it to another place. That has not happened. And in the core part of the area, the area no longer is manufacturing, and so that district does not reflect existing or the future vision for the area. The Northside community has expressed interest, again, those strategies to allow new housing, to make sure that they're meeting residents' needs, and to encourage neighborhood-based, specifically resident-based, especially by those of African Americans and low-income residents of the Northside businesses. The proposed districts will be compatible with the scale and the character of the existing area, and will result in a logical order of development. And that's because these districts were created specifically using the lots, blocks, and streets in our existing neighborhoods, including the Northside neighborhood. So it fits with the pattern and will support a scale of uses and size of buildings that match with the area. And so with that, I am happy to answer any questions that the commissioners have on this project.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions of staff at this point?
I just have one question I wanted to ask, just for clarification. So I know that you said you did outreach before starting this project, and COVID kind of broke up the process, and how you kind of did that. I just wanted to know what were the results from the outreach, as far as like numbers of people that participated in the meetings, and then just what were some of their responses about how they felt about the project. I read the comment by Mr. Bogan of support. I also wanted to know what the residents said just during that, since it hasn't been a consistent, outreach process due to COVID.
Sure. So when we did the meeting back in January of 2020, we were looking at a larger area. And off the top of my head, I don't remember how many people we had, but I would guess that it was 36 attended that meeting. Since then, we've had to take an approach that's not a large gathering. And so, going door to door, and talking to people and trying to pick up as many meetings as possible where the community is already attending. So as this area again has about 80 parcels, a good number of them are vacant, as you can tell by the aerial. And if you've gone through the area, about 24 are occupied with residential structures. And we talked to both when we were handing out the flyers, as well as in conversations at the in-person NECD meeting and over the phone, have talked to several of the residents specifically in that block, that is bordered on the north by Parsons and on the south by Myrtle. And that's where we heard, the circumstance where, someone wanted to expand their home, but was told that they were not able to without, going through a variance process. Spoke with another resident who owns the vacant lot next to him, and wanted to add another home there. And that's not something that's currently permitted under M1. And so the residents that we have heard from were supportive of this change because how it protected the existing residential uses of the area. We also put up online, you could drop pins in places where there were streets. We did not get a lot of responses. We got 2 that gave us some locations for street improvements. But we're also going to have, and we heard some specific comments about residents, specifically again, that block Parsons on the north, Myrtle on the south, about the need for street updates in that circling that block, as well as Pitcher Street. But that's why we're going to do those meetings in August that specifically talk not just about this area, but the larger Northside area, to understand what are all the streets that need to be redone and what are our orders of priority to get them into the plans. So we did have a pause. However, I would say since we started in March, we've been talking pretty consistently with a wide group of neighbors and residents, mailing out flyers, dropping them off, mailing notices, giving handouts, having information at NACD for pickup. And so I think we've been able to reach a good number of the property owners in this area.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions, staff? I have one. Are there any, to the best of your knowledge, are there any non-conforming uses that would be created as a result of the rezoning?
I don't believe there will be. Livework 1 and Livework 2 are pretty flexible. Livework 1 allows the single family, and that's why we tried to locate it in the places that would support single family development, or single unit development, I guess is a better way of phrasing it. Livework 2 was designed to kind of bridge the world or be the transition between neighborhoods and more intensive development like commercial and industrial. So it does allow for, some production uses, specifically if they have, a front, a retail or a showroom or, that type of element. So it's meant to kind of bridge the gap between the areas that are in transition. So I don't think we are creating any new nonconformities. We tried to be very careful about that. But I would need to, again, I don't think we are.
It could be, there's a couple of buildings that it's hard to tell when you're, driving by or walking by. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on inside. So that was the reason to ask the question. So, but I appreciate the answer there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Any
the goal,
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say the goal of this work in any of the small zonings that we've taken, rezonings we've taken to this board in the past, the goal is to try and make, to make them whole, and not so much we're going to zone this for what we think we want it to be in 10 years, but also understanding what's there now, and to be a little less broad stroked than maybe we were in 2005 with the districts.
And a coda to that, in the existing zoning, the majority of these parcels are non-conforming uses as they sit right now. So, but that's veering beyond clarifying questions. So I'll stop there.
Mr. Chair, may I just chime in real quick?
Please.
So just as an example, we have a machine shop on Frank Street that a realtor contacted me about reuse of that for prospective use, and we went through everything, and it's a situation where the change in use is going to be permitted in that Live Work 2 zone district that part of this area being rezoned. So we've already had one example where, there was it's on the market, it's for sale. We mentioned it's also an area being rezoned. So we made sure to look at the proposed zoning and how that would align with the proposed use of this new client. And, it was not going to be a problem with the live work standards. So, so far, it does align well, just like Christina mentioned.
Great. Any other clarifying questions? Looking around, seeing none. Then I will open the public hearing. Have there been any comments left for us on this item?
Yes, there was 3 comments, and I will play them for you momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon or good evening. My name is John Cruiser, and my address is 817 Boswell Lane, Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm also the chairperson of Asylum Lake Preservation Association. I want to make sure that I voice our support of the phase 2 of the natural features protection. I think it's absolutely imperative that the city move forward with the suggestions that the community has put forth onto the mapping. The further that we get into the discussion in regards to the importance of green spaces, I think it's absolutely necessary that we factor in the importance of the green spaces. Certainly, sometimes they may not be the ideal green spaces that some people imagine, but for the people that are next to them, surrounded by them, it's a lot of times it's all that they have. It's their little slice of heaven. It's their little slice of paradise. It gives them the peace of mind. It helps them heal emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it's a positive thing. I think that there's so much development and there's so much disconnection with our technology that it's so important that we maintain a connection to what truly is real. And what's real is the natural spaces, the natural things, the trees, the air, the grass, the water, and what sometimes may seem insignificant to others in the big context of things is all that a lot of people have. And I think it's important for a community, it's important for our city, it's important for our world to create more green spaces and to factor them as just as important as everything else. Hope you take into consideration everything. I hope you support it. I'm sure you will. It's the right thing to do. Have a great evening.
Name is Lori Holmes. I am a resident of Kalamazoo. I live on High Point Drive. I have been on the Environmental Concerns Committee to the City Commission and in other organizations, and I have been present virtually at the meetings of the Natural Features Protection Board. And my comment is that I want to congratulate the city on forming this board and on the way it has formulated phase 1 and phase 2 of the ordinance. I have seen it working. I've seen it work well because the staff and the board work with developers to make developments happen in a way that is good for the ecology, the environment of the city. It's telling us and telling the world what kind of community we want to be. And I fully support the adoption of the phase 2 and wish the board luck in working on with each of the developers or each of the people who need to come to the board and organize their development in a way that's going to benefit the environment. Thank you very much.
My name is Judy Huxman, and I live in the Oakwood neighborhood. And this is a comment about the NFP. Kalamazoo is a community. If you are living here, you most likely choose to be here because it is a great place to live, educate children, run a business, or be a part of some enterprise. I too chose to be here for those reasons, but the most important reason was that I could live in a vibrant city and still be surrounded by beautiful green spaces and close to the in-city lakes and streams. We all know that within a city, human beings need a lot of green spaces to support our fundamental health. For example, our trees produce fresh oxygen and improve our air quality, while our lakes, streams, and wetlands provide habitat for animals, special recreational opportunities for humans, and above all, are part of the system that provides all of us with life-sustaining drinking water. This is why protecting these life-sustaining natural systems is critical, and the NFP Phase 2 seeks to do just that. Granted, this ordinance covers future development, and I imagine that some property owners and developers are confused or upset that they have to change to a more thoughtful approach to property development, rather than to simply build out every square inch of space, regardless of the present and future environmental consequences. Here's an idea. Rather than destroy more of our family's natural life support systems, perhaps those large abandoned parking lots in Kalamazoo could be put to better use through creative development. I wanted to thank the people who have shared their time and expertise with the city to create the NFP Phase 2 map and ordinance changes, as these forward-looking documents will go a long way to protecting our special city, the city of Kalamazoo, both now and into the future. Please protect the natural features of Kalamazoo now. Phase 2 NFP has my full support. Thank you.
So,
Okay, there was one more that for some reason did not get queued. So let me get that up for you real quickly here.
Olmsted, 1500 North Pitcher Street, Kalamazoo, 49007. Hello, my name is Tom Olmsted, and I am the resident mill manager for Graphic Packaging Kalamazoo Mill. Our $600 million mill expansion is coming along well, and we anticipate manufacturing commercial coated recycled paperboard later this year. As many of you know, this paperboard is used for essential products like cereal packaging, tissue and toweling packaging, as well as the packaging that is used for N95 masks. Graphic Packaging Kalamazoo Mill very much appreciates our relationship with the Kalamazoo City Planning and Zoning team as we upgrade the property around our mill and folding carton plant. Graphic Packaging has reviewed the rezoning proposal, and we appreciate the thought that has been included in the process of generating the proposal. At this time, Graphic Packaging is neutral on the overall rezoning proposal. In general, we do encourage the city to consider a boundary between manufacturing and commercial and residential real estate. Thank you and have a good evening.
Okay, that concludes the public comments for this hearing.
thank you. Now, there were a couple of comments in there that were obviously not regarding this case, that were about the NFP. So bear that in mind as we continue on with the agenda. Do you happen to know, are there any items, just in case, are there any items in the queue for non-agenda items? Any messages
yes.
in the queue for?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there's 3 right now for non-agenda items.
Have you happened to listen? There's 2. Have you happened to listen to those?
I basically skim through them just to make sure there's no profanity, but I will go through while you guys are going over your hearing.
Do you know, are either of those related to this case, this rezoning, or are they both non-agenda to the best of your knowledge after skimming?
I can't really tell for sure if they are or not. Like I said, I just kind of go through and make sure that, it's kept in a public content and not profane at all. But to try to, decide if it's related or not, I haven't.
I'm wondering if it would be prudent to, you happen to know a length of time? Like it's 2 messages, so we're talking like 8 minutes. Is that what we're talking here?
Probably most of the messages are 2 minutes or less, so probably 4 minutes or less.
Presumably also we would know in the first sentence if it was a non-agenda item versus this case.
Would you mind, I'm going to leave the public hearing open. We will continue talking, maybe asking a couple of questions before we take a motion. If you wouldn't mind listening to the first couple comments of each of those messages, just to confirm if they happen to be related to this case or not. I'd hate to get to non-agenda items and have one of those messages be related to this item and us have missed it. So if you wouldn't mind doing that and then pop in when you're done with that and let us know, that would be very much appreciated.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you. While we're waiting on that, are there, I guess, any other questions or general, I guess, inquiries? Commissioner Burgess.
Sure. Christina, in your presentation, I heard you address this, but I'm not quite sure I understood. Could you say a little bit more about, I see that Live Work 1 and Live Work 2 are sort of mix and match throughout the area. How do you decide which one goes where? Was it, I did see that a lot of the areas are vacant. Mm-hmm. Is Live Work 1 correlated with existing single family homes, or tell me more about that?
Sure, I'm going to reshare my screen so you can look at the map with me. Hold on one second. Do you see the zoning map? Yes, okay, great, thank you. So Live Work 1 and Live Work 2 are pretty similar districts, but there are a couple of key differences. So first of all, Live Work 1 allows single unit buildings, so single family homes. And Live Work 2 allows duplexes and up. It can look like a single family home. We're just talking about the number of units that are in it. And so that is a major, one of the big differences between the two. Live Work 2, as I said, was also created as a way to kind of bridge the gap between neighborhoods and more intensive commercial development. It allows for a mix of use. It allows for residential and commercial uses, but it also allows for some, foot in both worlds, light production uses, especially those that have, a retail storefront or a showroom component attached to them. Because both Live Work 1, Live Work 2, and our node district, which is not used here, but was created at the same time, were all meant to be, neighborhood scale districts, created using our existing lot, block, and street structure. And we're all meant to kind of to foster that, that walkable urban neighborhood areas that many of these, many of these neighborhoods had in the past that have since kind of eroded or have with the vacant lots. It's not as strong as what it was. They both are meant to also be very, be flexible in their uses, understanding that in Kalamazoo, mixed use doesn't just happen vertically, meaning commercial on the ground floor and residential above. You'll find in many neighborhoods and on many key corridors that mix of use is horizontal. It may change from lot to lot or block to block, and it's a recognition of that pattern. So when looking at where to locate Live Work 1 and Live Work 2, we looked at the adjacent uses. So, of course, north of Patterson, so if you can see my cursor, this is Pitcher Street here. So excuse me, this is, oh, oh dear, I don't have my street name here. Well, this is the railroad track. It's not a street, that's a railroad track. Thank you. Wondered why I didn't have that labeled. To the east of the railroad track, north of Patterson, is industrial. It's Graphics Packaging's campus. It is the wastewater treatment plant campus. And so when you think about Patterson from here to the east, it is a more intensive street. It does have intensive commercial and industrial uses on it. And that we definitely put Live Work 2 there because again, that's our transition district. That is meant to kind of serve as a transition between core neighborhood and more intensive uses.
Gotcha.
We chose to use Live Work 2 in 2 places to the south because those blocks aren't divided up into a lot of small lots. They have housed or currently house, a larger commercial use. And as Chair Milliken mentioned before, one of the goals with this rezoning is to kind of make an area whole and reduce nonconformances. And so we're trying to be very mindful about, the structures that were there and the block size and what could happen in the future.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks. Any other questions at this time? Or any update on the comments?
Yes. 2 of the comments were both regarding the NFP, and
okay.
there's still a general comment that I'll play towards the end.
Very good. So nothing related to this. So
No.
I appreciate you checking on that for us very much, just to be safe. With that, then I will close the public hearing. Take one more look around to see if any other clarifying questions. And if not, I'll return to my agenda. I'll need to assist on this. And I'll look for a motion to kick us off into a discussion. And remember, this is also like the last one. We will be making a recommendation to City Commission. So I'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval of the rezoning request for properties generally located south of Patterson, east of Edwards, north of North Street, and west of Verberg Park and Walbridge Street from the M1 to Live Work 1 and Live Work 2 districts, and from the RMU with the Riverfront overlay and the NFP overlay to the M1 district with the NFP overlay. A lot to say there. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved to rezone all of the above as just previously described.
Motion by Patelko. Is there a second?
Swan seconds.
Second by Swan. Excellent. Is there discussion on the motion?
I suppose I have to kick this off. Is that how this works?
If you've got something to say, go for it.
Well, first I want to say this is a really big rezoning, but I appreciate the efforts to eliminate non-conforming uses and to kind of create zoning that reflects both the existing uses and sort of the future use of the land that conforms with the city plan. I was actually really hoping we would hear more public comment per Commissioner Harrison's question, and I was kind of watching for that to come in on the email today. But it sounds like the outreach was as successful as it could be in the COVID times, and the community there's general community support, and then it seems like at least no objections from the manufacturing industrial side of things. So I would support the rezoning as a group.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'll go. I guess the
Excellent.
one thing that I will say, I know when we did it pre-COVID and we're meeting with different residents, and I've talked to different people in the community, and a lot of residents were really excited about this going forward because a lot of them, like our city staff was saying, when they wanted to do upgrades to their homes, a lot of them didn't realize where they were actually zoned and what that actually meant. And it became, very restrictive where they weren't able to use their property. And I think the community now is excited that the city is actually like listening and wanting to make changes. And I think that this will be a good fit for that area because they want to revitalize the Northside. They want to bring new businesses there. They want to bring new homes there. And then people do want to expand. There's a lot of residents that I've spoken to that live there that want to do other things, but they have been so restrictive and they never knew that. So I think that this will be a great direction for us to move forward. And it's definitely going into our vision. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Who's next? I will say this is an area I've enjoyed running through quite a bit, and as we've had these conversations and discussions and updates, and it's an area of really untapped opportunity, and not because of, I think, lack of interest, but you really see what an obstacle zoning can be in this particular area, and you really see the power of this implementation step that is zoning. Imagine Kalamazoo is a great tool, and it's a great thing that the community did, but without these next steps that the city takes, like amending its zoning ordinance, I don't want to dismiss Imagine Kalamazoo, but it is it's really just a vision. It's just a guidepost, and so it needs these next steps. And so, to Brian's point, it is unfortunate that there isn't more feedback here, but I think it's complicated. It's confusing. You see this multicolored patchwork map. You see these codes. You see these laws, and it's much easier to sit and look at the SimCity like video game and play a visionary and do that kind of stuff. Whereas it's a lot more nuanced and difficult to do what we're doing here. So I applaud everyone for taking this step and reviewing this and kind of digging into the details here. I think this really helps to open this up. I think the public comment that we did receive from the Brownfield Authority and from Graphics Packaging, two of the major players in this area, was very influential and important. I also think it's important to note that this is consistent with the standards in the ordinance for rezoning. It's also consistent with the master plan and with the neighborhood plan. So I want to put that out there on the record as well. Any other comments or discussion? If not, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Burgess,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Milliken,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Patelko,
Yes.
Pitts, absent, Swan,
Yes.
Bias.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Good
Motion
work.
passes.
Both of those will go on to City Commission. Thank you. All right. I don't think there's any discussion or action items on the agenda, so City Planners Report.
So I do not have much of a report tonight. Also, my voice is clearly on its way out. I think that, our other new business item will take up the rest of our meeting, and so I'll just cede my time to that. Unless anyone has any specific questions.
Any specific questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you. So then NFP2 update.
Well, good evening, commissioners, and thanks for tacking NFP on the end of your agenda tonight. And I'm going to try to move through some things to give you an update that I think you're going to need ahead of an agenda item at next month's meeting. But, try to also point you toward resources that you can kind of check some of this stuff out in the meantime. My name is Jamie McCarthy, and I serve as the staff liaison to the city's Natural Features Protection Review Board. And as I mentioned tonight, I'm going to give an update about a recommendation that's going to be before you next month that's coming from the NFP Review Board, and it has to do with amendments to both the overlay district map and some text amendments. I'm going to share my screen here today. Give me just a moment. Okay, you can see my slides now. All right, so today actually marks the 2 years to the date since NFP was adopted by the City Commission. So I thought I'd start out by giving you guys an update on what NFP has been able to accomplish and demonstrate how it works with development, not necessarily preventing or prohibiting it on a site, but it's a tool that's been really useful in guiding some thoughtful design around and incorporating in natural features that are existing on a property. Then I'll talk briefly about the NFP amendments, show you where you can find information that you can check out before next month's meeting, and then talk about the community engagement that we've started and are going to continue to do in June. So the current overlay district map is was identified in our future land use map in the master plan. And the NFP Review Board or staff have over the last 2 years reviewed and approved 12 site plans for NFP, which reflects about 10% of the site plans that the city reviews each year. Out of those projects, there have been 3 variances granted out of 4 total that have been requested, and those were on 3 different sites. We had one site that was seeking 2 different variances, and with the NFP Review Board's guidance and recommendation to the ZBA, one of those was sort of selected and granted for the site. Now I want to show you quickly 3 different projects that really show how NFP can add value to some projects that have come forward to the city and went through site plan review. This first one is a communications site here. It's right along the Kalamazoo River, so it's currently in NFP. And there was going to be some work done here. It's a cell phone tower. They're putting some new antennas up, and they needed to replace the backup energy source here at the site. Per their sort of standard specs, the company doing the work had planned to put in a generator that was going to be diesel powered. So there would be an above ground storage tank with diesel fuel in it, right near the river. And what NFP does that we didn't have in place before was restrict the use of large quantities of things like hazardous substances, in this case diesel, near water bodies. And so for this site, it was a fairly straightforward change in the specs to instead source and use a generator that's using propane here instead. And so that helps reduce the chance of any leaking or spills of diesel into the Kalamazoo River. We have another one here, again, currently in NFP. It's along Stadium Drive, and it's zoned community commercial. You can see here to the right is the site plan that was approved. When this project first came to city staff, they came forward saying they needed a 4,000 square foot building for the client. So the original placement of this building was right in the middle of the parcel. And that would have meant they were going to clear the property of all of the woodlands. This is a really steep slope back here as well. And they were going to put what turned out to be more parking than was allowed at the front of the property. And then they wanted to drive all the way around so they could have some access and some secure delivery. And then they were going to be putting up a 20+ foot retaining wall at the back of the property. Once they saw and kind of applied the NFP standards to the site, they were able to, move everything up, tighten up the parking so that they're, meeting the minimum standard. They do still have their secure access back here, but they saved over half of the woodlands here that they didn't have to clear. And then they needed and they were granted a variance to encroach a little bit into this slope setback area so they could put in their stormwater treatment in the back of the property. And I think that this was one of those examples of how that woodland buffer was able to be preserved and was really important to the residents to the south. This is a multifamily apartment community down here also at the bottom of the hill, which would have probably received a lot of the excess stormwater and perhaps caused some erosion problems. And then the last one I wanted to show here was a site that's still proposed, hasn't been approved yet, but is going through the approval process now. I would encourage you, if you want to get a flavor for kind of how the meetings with the NFP review board and developers go, this one, you can view the recording at the city's YouTube channel. It was the April NFP meeting. And here was a variance request to have some of a portion of the drive and mostly a dumpster located sort of at the back of the property that kind of encroached upon the slope here. And this is one of those examples where it's a property on a corner. So it's sometimes hard to locate a dumpster when you can't be in the front and side yards. And so they thought back here was the best location, but they were concerned if they moved it out of the slope area that they would lose parking. This is one where the NFP board had recommended and ZBA granted a variance over here for a tree that was taken down and helped keep everything out of the slope area. There are actually some very severe erosion problems here already. So we think some of the new parking lot and curbing and new stormwater treatment will help probably take care of some of that issue. The owner is also going to be doing some planting back here and stabilizing that slope. And so they were able to, protect this one natural feature that they had to sort of work around, but still be able to fully build out the site the way they wanted. They did end up being able to meet their minimum parking requirement on site. So that was a really good thing. And they were even able to, keep this ATM drive-through, which their client needed for the property here. So those are just a couple of the examples on kind of how this project has been unfolding in the last 2 years. What the NFP board has also been working on over the last year has been taking a look at the overlay district map. So pretty much since the time NFP was first adopted a couple of years ago, the community pointed out that the current map was good, but it was a bit incomplete and it didn't cover all of the important natural areas across the city. It was really kind of limited to a couple of areas in the city. So the NFP review board worked on a mapping analysis to identify these areas. And so some of the data and the criteria are listed here. And then they are publishing last month, they at their meeting kicked this off and published this recommended map and are now seeking community feedback. Let me pop that up there and show you where you can find it. So if you go to imaginekalamazoo.com, it's under projects NFP2, there's an interactive map that you can access here. Everything in green here is the existing overlay district that's been in place for the past 2 years. The pink parcels are the ones that are in the proposal to be added to the NFP overlay district. And what has been added here as well is if you want to zoom in kind of to street level, you can click on each parcel and you can find out specific information about that parcel. But more importantly, members of the community can then see what natural feature is on that site and why it's being recommended for the overlay district. So I think that's a really important piece, a nice communication piece to folks, so they can have some of that information and also check against and see if we do have errors. If this pops up and it has something they don't believe is on their site, we're asking folks to reach out to us and have us take a closer look. While we're on the website, I'll point out that the text amendments are also here for you to download and see in sort of a red line format, but also there's a table just with a more overview kind of summary of what the text amendments look like. You can also, there's a couple of ways to download essentially the information from the map or search information from the map in a table format, so you don't have to zoom in and out of here. And then we're going to be adding some more information to this website over the next week, just before notice letters are going to be sent out. Oops. Okay. So again, those proposed code amendments or amendments to the text, the NFP Review Board's been working with this, the standards for 2 years. And so they had a set of amendments that they thought would really help clarify some of the standards in some cases. Some of the changes will make implementation a bit easier or at least more straightforward. And they also made some changes in response to some concerns that we heard from the public last year. And so some of the biggest changes you're going to see, really the section they looked at the most was this tree standard. And so they're doing things, the amendments do things like simplify the tree tables and remove some of the more complicated ratios that consultants would talk to us about and maybe have some confusion over. It's also helping to remove some requirements for replanting or for hiring consultants or professional, arborists that might be costly for a project, maybe like a single family or duplex type project. And then you can see here, there's a small change to the woodland definition, and then some site development rules around adding some more flexibility for choices in native plants and other landscaping that's required on the site under the code already. And they updated the prohibited planting list for those invasive species. And then we also have a section here with some updates on when a property requires bonding, which we're actually kind of pulling that back a little and making sure we're using that tool when it's most necessary. And so there's some criteria that were added into or proposed to be added into the standard. Okay, so last I really want to talk about community engagement. It's been kicked off. I've been getting emails and phone calls. The NFP Review Board did that at their meeting last month. And we also sent out, there was a small, there was a little information about it in the View from the Curb this spring and summer, which gets mailed to all city residents, just as, again, kind of getting it on folks' radar. In the last couple of weeks, right before the NFP meeting in May, we sent out a bunch of emails, right? We used our NFP list from phase 1 and from last fall. So we had about 200 folks on that list. We reached out to our neighborhood associations, and then staff also reached out to stakeholders, folks who we were in communications with last fall and wanted to let them know sort of ahead of any notice letters that this stuff's up and available, and that it was going to be in front of the Planning Commission again soon. We also are preparing now our notice letters to go out, so that those will start hitting mailboxes next week. And then we'll also sync that up with some city news and social media, like we do with a lot of our rezoning type projects. We're offering 2 information sessions to let folks ask questions and find out more about this rezoning. And so that'll be 2 of those, one in the afternoon, one in the lunch hour, one in the evening in June, later in June. And then this time we're also making sure that we're giving folks some one-on-one specific time to look at their project. We're offering what we're calling our NFP zoning reviews. And so we've already had a request for one of these. I'm sure we'll be getting more, but we're gonna, do a little bit of mapping, mark up the map, show someone how NFP might affect their property, and then make sure we're having a phone call, connecting with them, talking to them about their concerns and letting them know kind of how this applies to their property. I think already through some phone calls I've had, taking that time, being able to explain to people what the code does and what it doesn't do has helped clear up some misconceptions about what might happen to their property or what could happen to their property. And people have gotten a lot more comfortable with kind of how this would or would not impact things they wanted to do in the future. Then we're inviting the public to give us feedback, to reach out to us if they have concerns about the map or errors in the map they want us to look at, and do that by the next NFP meeting, which is June 22nd. And then that will put us in really good shape to have a recommendation to the Planning Commission that you'd be able to hold your public hearing on July 1. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Good, good summary and good update, Jamie. I appreciate it. Any questions? Remembering that we will have this at our meeting next month with a request for a recommendation. So good low pressure opportunity to get some information.
And I'll make sure.
Sorry, Jamie, could you speak a little bit to the bonding section? I'm not 100% clear on what that is and what that means for different parcels.
Yeah, so during phase one, the committee that helped sort of put together some of the standards had heard from the community that there were concerns that if there wasn't some sort of, if there wasn't something in place like bonding of a property, there might not be a big enough consequence for folks to just kind of disregard the rules. Or, you know, sometimes accidents can happen. These are construction sites, things like that can happen. So the way the code is written right now is it's a very low threshold. You know, it's based on the size of the project that bonding is automatically required so that the developer, you know, has to have a bond in place in case there's any natural features that would be damaged and have to be replaced. And we're finding that so many of these projects, either the natural features on them are quite minimal or the work that's happening wouldn't impact those very much. There's a very low likelihood that there'd be an impact. And so that feels like the bonding really isn't really accomplishing much. And so the way it's written now is to set a couple of criteria that the board would use to evaluate and determine that something requires a bond.
Any other questions, or who's got the next question for us? All right, well, I'll go. I think this was before us, was it November of last year? I think it was November. Since then, are those code amendments like the most significant changes that have happened to the NFP2? Would you say? Like you had that little slide with like 4 sort of major code tweaks. Would you say those are sort of the most significant changes that have taken place since November?
Yeah, I would say that the code changes, they were much more minimal last fall. And in response to some of the concerns folks had, once we really listened to them, and we heard them say we don't like NFP or we're not comfortable with it on our property, but we do understand we have lots of natural features that are important to us. So we started realizing it's probably the code, it's those rules that feel like they don't work for people. And so that's part of the reason they took a deep dive. They had a committee who really looked at kind of section by section, you know, how could those be changed so that it's still protecting to a degree that we feel is adequate, but perhaps, you know, not making it so restrictive or appear to be an additional cost that would be unnecessary. So that's one part. I would say if you compared maps side to side, there's a little bit of shift in the map, but not significant, but there are a few more. There's probably another 100 to 200 parcels added to this map compared to last fall. And part of that was because we were able to use some updated data. And then also we had used one sort of filter or criteria that we decided to remove because it didn't feel as objective as the board wanted. They wanted to go back to a very, you know, black, white, data-driven kind of map that felt more objective. So it did shift it a little bit, but overall, you know, you're still seeing it's covering water bodies throughout the city. You're definitely seeing that along the stream corridors. And then you're definitely seeing it picked up along some of the steeper ridges and parts of the river valley watershed kind of features in the city.
I think that code element is an important piece to note, and I applaud staff and the NFP board for tackling that and addressing that, because I think, you know, I think that's been a big change, and I appreciate the, I don't know if I can say, appreciate the adjustments, I'll choose that word, that have been made, and I think they're for the better. and they do exactly what you say in clarifying and addressing a lot of those questions. And you don't need to do this right now. I would encourage you, Jamie, perhaps at the next meeting to, and I would encourage everyone who did not watch the NFP meeting from a couple weeks ago, because this was part of the presentation. You did a great job of sort of differentiating. There's certain types of development that go through staff review, and there's certain kinds of development that have to go through a public review, whether it's ZBA or Planning Commission, et cetera. And that becomes sort of a differentiator in the code of different elements of the NFP that come into play. And I thought that was a nice way of presenting it, because it's just a different way of telling people, you know, if you've got a pretty simple, straightforward development plan, this whole giant thing that we're putting in front of you doesn't necessarily apply. It's this column of things that apply. Now, if you're building something complicated that you're already asking for a number of tweaks and changes, then a few more tweaks and changes may have to come into play with an expanded version of NFP. I'm not giving it justice. You did a much better job of explaining it, but I think it was helpful, and I think it was a nice presentation. So I would encourage everyone to watch that most recent NFP meeting. And if you still have questions, to go through the YouTube channel and to go through that page, because there are a lot of great presentations that have been made to date. Any other questions or comments on this issue?
Mr. Chair, I will just mention that we will be posting a fact sheet on the website as well. So keep an eye out for that. I think some of the elements that you just mentioned are kind of reflected in that fact sheet. And so it might be worthwhile for folks to take a look at that. And we're also sending out that fact sheet and a frequently asked questions along with the notice letter this time. So those in the public who are being put on notice, they're going to get some of that information right in their hand when they get their letter.
Thank you for taking those steps. Thank you, everyone, for your attention to this. Great work. Now we'll move on to general public comments, and we know there are a few. Remember that we've received already some general public comments related to NFP2, so don't forget about those. We may hear them again here, who knows? But if you wouldn't mind playing those comments that have been left for us in the last queue, please.
Sure, one moment, please.
Hi, my name is Tina McClinton. I was calling because you were talking about planning on doing things. I was hoping you would plan on fixing the infrastructure in Southtown neighborhood so the sewers and the storm drains won't back up and flood our neighborhood out. I was just wondering, was that in your plans to ever fix the infrastructure around the neighborhood? Vine, Lake, Burdick, Stockbridge, Crosstown, all the streets that flood. Thank you very much. Bye.
Name is Lori Holmes. I am a resident of Kalamazoo. I live on High Point Drive. I have been on the Environmental Concerns Committee to the City Commission and in other organizations, and I have been present virtually at the meetings of the Natural Features Protection Board. And my comment is that I want to congratulate the city on forming this board and on the way it has formulated phase 1 and phase 2 of the ordinance. I have seen it working. I've seen it work well because the staff and the board work with developers to make developments happen in a way that is good for the ecology, the environment of the city. It's telling us in telling the world what kind of community we want to be. And I fully support the adoption of the phase 2 and wish the board luck in working on with each of the developers or each of the people who need to come to the board and organize their development in a way that's going to benefit the environment. Thank you very much.
My name is Judy Huxman, and I live in the Oakwood neighborhood. And this is a comment about the NFP. Kalamazoo is a community. If you are living here, you most likely choose to be here because it is a great place to live, educate children, run a business, or be a part of some enterprise. I too chose to be here for those reasons, but the most important reason was that I could live in a vibrant city and still be surrounded by beautiful green spaces and close to the in-city lakes and streams. We all know that within a city, human beings need a lot of green spaces to support our fundamental health. For example, our trees produce fresh oxygen and improve our air quality, while our lakes, streams, and wetlands provide habitat for animals, special recreational opportunities for humans, and above all, are part of the system that provides all of us with life-sustaining drinking water. This is why protecting these life-sustaining natural systems is critical, and the NFP Phase 2 seeks to do just that. Granted, this ordinance covers future development, and I imagine that some property owners and developers are confused or upset that they have to change to a more thoughtful approach to property development, rather than to simply build out every square inch of space, regardless of the present and future environmental consequences. Here's an idea. Rather than destroy more of our family's natural life support systems, perhaps those large abandoned parking lots in Kalamazoo could be put to better use through creative development. I wanted to thank the people who have shared their time and expertise with the city to create the NFP Phase 2 map and ordinance changes, as these forward-looking documents will go a long way to protecting our special city, the city of Kalamazoo, both now and into the future. Please protect the natural features of Kalamazoo now. Phase 2 NFP has my full support. Thank you.
And that is the end of public comments.
All right. City Commission liaison comments. Let's see. We've got Mr. Pradel and Mr. Urban both.
Yeah, we're both here.
Any comments for us?
NFP2 is a big step forward, and it still is. I'm so happy that we're still working on actually delivering on what was intended in the master plan. I mean, it's unprecedented that we're still actively implementing the work of the product of Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. So often, master plans ended up going onto the shelf. And here we are actually delivering on the things that we said we were planning to do. So kudos to everybody who's involved with that. I'm sensing, though, that there are in some quarters some concerns about being unduly restrictive of property rights when it comes to developing land with the NFP2 restrictions added to it. I sense that by talking to people who are concerned one-on-one, you're able to reassure them or to clear up misunderstandings. But let's realize that there are going to be some folks who are going to be intransigent. And I just want all the city commission, planning commissioners to be prepared for the fact that when it comes down to a vote, you're not going to please everybody. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen next month. So be prepared for with a good knowledge base going into that meeting, and listen carefully and be able to defend your vote. That's my advice. Thank you.
Chair Milliken, I'll share an update as well. Appreciate everybody who recently joined the Planning Commission as well. Thank you all for your service and those who continue to serve. We're glad you're here. Want to take a second to wish City Planner Christina Anderson a very happy birthday. Might not have realized while she's here tonight that it is indeed her birthday, so happy birthday. And this was alluded to a couple times here tonight, but perhaps one of the blessings of the pandemic has been we've had a chance to do some really fantastic virtual roundtables or town hall type sessions for people to learn more about what's going on. And so anyways, I just wanted to lift up a couple of those that might be worthy for the public to check out on May 24th. So first, if you go to the City of Kalamazoo, if you just type in Google City of Kalamazoo YouTube, you'll find all the recordings from all these public boards and commissions, and then there are also all the town halls recorded there as well. On May 24th, there was one on the Allied Paper landfill cleanup project, and there was a virtual town hall that lasted about an hour. Definitely would encourage the public and people who are really passionate and interested in workings of our community to check that out. Jamie did a great job facilitating that and making sure that there's useful information for the public. And then much of the presentation that City Planner Anderson provided tonight was also provided in that April 12th town hall on the Northside zoning updates and street improvement updates. So if you're looking to provide people with sort of a condensed presentation, and it was great because it also just provided like, hey, what is zoning? And what is the master plan and the neighborhood plan? And so it really does a great job of giving the, from 101 to a little bit more of the in-depth that we got here tonight. So that one was on April 12th. And so that one was about 25 minutes long. So I'd encourage you to check that out as well. And then lastly, I was just going to mention that our next City Commission Committee of the Whole meeting is coming up on next Monday on June 7th at 5 p.m. And just a reminder, that's the meeting where city staff is planning to give us more in-depth guidance in terms of the use of that $38.8 million in federal stimulus dollars. And there's certainly a lot of public interest in that. And certainly it's an opportunity for us to let our Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 plan shine to put that to use. So I encourage you to share that with others. And if you have any input as well, as we move forward from there, to let us know. So anyways, thanks for your great work tonight and appreciate the opportunity to be a part.
Well, thank you both. Planning Commissioner comments. Remember, this is a chance to, if there's any questions for staff outside the agenda or any other comments or little nuggets you want to share, feel free. I won't necessarily go around the table, but if you got something, shout it out. Otherwise.
I have a sort of a process question that maybe we can take offline with IT, but I did want to address that we were rehearing some of the public comments. I'm not sure if they were submitted into the wrong buckets or if they were submitted for each of our agenda items, but not related. So I'm throwing out that, I would hope in the future we don't have to rehear comments that are not related to the agenda items, and hopefully we can come up with a way to make that happen.
Great, thank you. Agreed. Other comments? Got a quick hook tonight. On the first rezoning hearing that was not city initiated, that was privately initiated, I noticed there were a couple of new forms in there that were sort of the application forms and the applicant submitted. Thank you for including those. I think that was probably a process improvement on staff's end in terms of the submittals, but also including them for us. I thought that was great information. So thanks for putting those in the packet. Thanks everybody for your participation tonight. Good solid meeting. We've got an even bigger one next month. So it's July 1. I know we got a couple of emails asking about schedule, but so if your schedule happens to change, you get a last minute invite to a party in the Hamptons or something, let staff know so we can make sure we have quorum, because that that meeting, that notice is being sent out, and that meeting's not changing. So we need to make sure we at least have quorum here. All right. Seeing no one else clamoring, seeing nothing else on our agenda, this meeting's adjourned. Have a great June. Bye-bye.
Good night.